Hello, my name is Andrea Wilcox. I'm Executive Director for KOSBE, the Kingsport Office of Small Business Development and Entrepreneurship. Our mission at KOSBE is to assist startups and existing businesses. Each year we put on an educational program twice a year for the small business community. Today I'm going to show you an example of what you may have missed if you did not have the opportunity to attend our night school, and I hope that you'll come back and register in November for the fall night school program. Here's what you missed. I hope you enjoy it.
Good evening. I am Pat Elmore, Market Development Manager for CenturyLink, and I'm loving the Tennessee area. But tonight I am not a Market Development Manager for CenturyLink. I am a generational preference authoritarian. I will talk for 20 minutes about generational preferences and what I found, and then Bob will pick up from there and talk 20 minutes, and then we will have 30 minutes for questions and answers. A couple of years ago, a younger peer of mine approached me at work, and he laughed and he said, "Pat, you are an old Gen Xer." I looked at him and I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "No, Pat, I did not call you old." And from there, I developed an interest in generational preferences and started reading about it myself because I knew little about, I'd heard of Gen X, of course, boomers. I'm a baby boomer myself. I'd heard of boomers. But I wanted to learn more about them, and as I completed my master's in strategic leadership and management this year, I conducted my research on generational preferences and how to integrate multiple generations in the workplace. A fascinating, fascinating journey. And let's dive in. And here are the generations. We have we'll start with the veterans, the oldest generation in the workplace, at 7% of the workplace. The veterans grew up in a very, very frightening time. Depression era immediately followed by World War II. Very frightening times with rationing of foods, no jobs, very frightening times. And then you have the largest generation in the workplace, the baby boomers. 42% of the workplace is made up of baby boomers. Over 78 million baby boomers in the workplace and exiting quickly, expected to exit the workplace quickly over the next 10 years. However, the economic environment I found and the declining pension plans are keeping the baby boomers in the workplace a bit longer. Baby boomers grew up in a time of growth and prosperity. Anything could happen, and the world was theirs, and they were willing to work for it and make it happen and do anything to get what they wanted. They grew up in the time of racial unrest, desegregation, civil rights movements, the assassination of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, and the introduction of the computer to the workplace. It was a big one, but it was still a computer in the workplace. Gen Xers. Gen Xers at 21% of the workplace, sorry Bob. Gen Xers, 21% of the workforce. Gen Xers are the product of the workaholic baby boomers. We left those kids alone to fend for themselves. They became a nation of latchkey kids. Divorce rates increased over 30% as both parents were working outside the home. And children born out of wedlock increased significantly. The Gen Xers saw their parents in downsized, right-sized organizations booted from their jobs. They have little loyalty, or stereotypical. Remember, stereotypical, but we'll address that a little bit later. Stereotypically, they have little respect or authority or loyalty to organizations. They need to own the process themselves. They need to develop their skill sets broadly and be in control. The last generation, or Gen Ys, at 30% of the workplace, 70 million Gen Ys, or millennials, you may have heard them called, in the workplace. This youngest 20-something set literally cut their teeth on technology. From the time they were born, everything was animated. The toys, the mobiles over the bed, everything played music, dance, skip, jump. Then there came the video games. The video game, everything was animated. But the time they started to school, they had a cell phone stuck to their ear. And then they were texting and emailing their entire lives. Everything was animated. Highly stimulated group of people. 70 million of them in the workplace. Next slide. Organizations today are facing tremendous challenges due to many reasons. We're in a global marketplace, a digital age, a fast-moving digital age. Everything is digitized, as we talked about the younger generation. We're in an intellectual or knowledge worker age. In the intellectual age, your machines are not the most important asset you have in your organization. Some of you may remember a time when it was. Your people are your most valuable asset, and if you are not able to inspire your employees to become fully engaged and own the process and create a high level of loyalty, you will have less success, less of an opportunity to succeed as a business. You need to be able to inspire your employees to succeed. Conflict and reduced performance. If you do not effectively integrate the multiple generations into the workplace and create true diversity, conflict results. When conflict results, there's little collaboration. People do not work together. Your process breaks down. Results decline. Sustainable shareholder value is not arrived at. And when your people are your most valuable asset, investors around the world are beginning to make decisions, or making decisions on where and how to invest money based on an organization's ability to inspire their employees, people-oriented organizations, because they know that if your organization is a people-oriented climate or culture, you're more likely to arrive at sustainable shareholder value. There's also a talent shortage due to declining birth rates, and this will continue to increase in severity. And when your people are your most valuable asset, how do you attract and retain the top talent to be able to succeed? And on top of that, how do you align all systems with literally something for everyone to keep everyone happy and motivated and maintain cost controls? I conducted my research to assess generational preferences, to examine the needs of each generation and the implications their values and preferences have in the workplace, to provide guidance to any organization in designing system strategies. Next slide. Thank you, Bob, for driving me here. I used just about every kind of research methodology out there, but I will not dive into all the research methodologies. You will receive handouts. You can see what I used and actually some of the results. I'll just point to a few things I found as I go through, and you can see some of the things that I found, and all these things are consistent. Boomers exiting the workforce in mass, younger generations, little loyalty to the organization. Communications and workplace needs and preferences have changed. It's a digital age. The younger generations, and as we'll see later, they want to use the technology. They need an animated environment. They want to use the technology. Leadership preferences have changed. There's little tolerance for command and control leaders in today's world. And command and control leaders cannot motivate and inspire people. Learning needs have changed. As you will see, culture preferences have changed as well, as we touched on. And here's some more research methodologies. I will not get into these. I conducted observations within my organization and out. Also created a 16-question questionnaire, which I submitted to some 250 people within my organization. 91 responses across generations, and let's just skip through these. But again, you will have these in a handout. I do want to touch on this, however. One question in my survey asked, what value, what kind of leader do you want? What quality, leadership trait, do you want your leader or manager to have? 84.38% across all the generations, and we only had 3 responses from veterans. All the veterans said they wanted a leader who they can trust, who is honest. They also want to be trusted to do the job and not be micromanaged. This was across all generations. We will skip through this one. And you can see, you can look at that at your leisure. This one I do want to touch on because this ties with the changing culture, the changing workplace needs. Out of all the responses, I ask, what form of communications do you want your manager to use to give you feedback? That could be anything, feedback. 48% across all generations said they wanted to receive feedback from text. It's an instant world. Everyone wants it now. You push a button and it's halfway, your messenger is halfway around the world and back again. Everything is instantaneous. Then you can see how the others stack up as well. We will skip over this one because it's self-explanatory. Observations showed some of the same things. Workplace preferences have changed. Everyone wants, all generations. This is what I found so striking. You hear so much about stereotypical values and preferences. Really, they all want a lot of the same these days. Culture preferences have changed. There's conflict, leadership preferences, collaborative, no command and control. Communication preferences across the generations. People want to communicate using digital. In-depth interviewed. I interviewed a lot of people within my organization and outside of my organization in diverse businesses, industries, community leaders. We've already discussed the first 4 items. And again, I saw the wise are extremely tech savvy, multitask ruthlessly. But then again, what I also observed, and this surprised me, I understand myself, but I understand myself now more than I ever did before, because I found myself, I also multitask ruthlessly, and so did a large percentage of all the other people across generations that I interviewed, observed, talked to, community leaders, whomever. I observed the same thing. Learning preferences have changed. Veterans and boomers, the older boomers, what I saw, preferred the more face-to-face, hands-on type of learning. Younger boomers and the Xers and Ys, especially the Ys want to be mentored. They learn by looking, seeing, touching, as we were talking earlier. They learn by observing. And interviewing one of our managers in one of our largest call centers, it's a very diverse workforce. He said to me, Pat, he said, if you leave them alone and not criticize them for their bad behaviors, said the Ys, you know, they've interacted with media their entire lives. Stereotypically, they're said to lack social skills. To some extent, I saw that, but yet I thought about myself when I was young. I lacked social skills too. But if you leave, he said, if you leave them alone and let them learn, encourage them to learn and share, the Ys naturally migrate to the boomers. They want to learn from the boomers. The boomers want to learn the tech savvy, the technical processes from the Ys. I can relate to that myself. I seek counsel from our tech savvy Ys who know it all. Other research, I'll just point to one thing. It's pretty consistent in my findings across all my research, but I will point to one thing as far as culture. In open-ended questions, these are some words that were a continuous thread as far as culture. Love, compassion, empathy. People want to know they're cared about by their employer, by their manager, by people in their workplace. Love, empathy, compassion. Love is the greatest of human needs. And if you're able to create a work environment where people feel cared about, where people feel loved, genuine care, you can motivate and inspire your people to a high level of energy that you will have trouble snuffing out, but you won't want to because they'll all be moving in the same direction. Conclusions and recommendations. Do not stereotype people. I am a culture within myself. If there were 1,000 people in this room, there would be 1,000 different cultures in this room. Each of us We're fiercely and wonderfully made. We're uniquely and wonderfully made individuals. We were made, we developed who we are, yes, through the culture, how we were raised, through our education, through our life experiences, birth order. I'm the oldest of 11 children. So imagine that. That made me a great extent who I am. And many other number of other things make you who you are. Respect people as individuals. Different is just different. It is not wrong. Divergent thinking is valuable and creates innovative thinking within an organization. So if you create a culture where people are valued and respected as individuals, everyone wants to be treated as an individual and with dignity and respect. That's what all generations want. In a culture of collaboration and learning, when you have divergent thinking, it creates a continuous learning and improvement process, just a continuous process. Create a benefits and rewards that are flexible to meet the needs of all your people. Hire for culture, especially your managers and leaders. They trump your organization in today's world. They can also shut you down. And I think the rest of it's pretty much what we've already discussed. Get people talking and learning from each other. Create reasons for people to talk and share and learn. Make it okay to talk about who you are, what your preferences are, so you can learn from each other and share. Create common ground. Why are we here? Why are you at your workplace? What is our goal? What is our vision? That's your common ground within your organization. Focus on what the team has in common, not differences. I interviewed a news media representative who said to me, Pat, he was talking about his divergent work group. He had a very diverse work group, but he did not once talk about their differences. He talked about the value each brought to the workforce to help them succeed. That's what it's all about. Everyone brings something of value to the table. Give everyone a voice in the process. Listen, 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 listen more than you talk, because you learn when you listen. And this we will skip over because that's self-explanatory, because I want to get to the point that will lead right into Bob's conversation or his part of the program. Again, I'll say we're in a digital world. Everything is fast moving. You can push a button and an email or whatever it is your form of media you're using is around the world and back again. Social media, whatever. We multitask ruthlessly, and as a result, we miscommunicate. My sister and brother-in-law are in the Navy. My brother-in-law told me a story. It could have been a frightening situation. He said, Pat, he said, I sent an email to my wife. He sent an email to my sister. He said a few minutes later he got a response, Lynn, I love you too, man, but you really need to be telling this to your wife. It was one of the officers. He had accidentally sent the email to one of the officers. What if that was proprietary information that would have resulted in national security breaches, and he had sent it outside of the military? I can relate to that myself. I have found myself in front of the computer, texting, the phone on my shoulder, and emailing. That is not a good thing. I learned twice, I miscommunicated, and I thought, okay, I really need to stop and think and not do this, because this is not good. Because I sent a text message to my daughter and she responded, Mom, what are you doing? I know nothing about a cable cut. And then I got a response from my peer at work, Pat, I don't believe you meant for this email to come to me. What if that was proprietary information and I accidentally sent it outside of my organization? It could shut your business down. Global proportions. I have one other thing to talk about chaos, and this will lead you directly into Bob. And I wish our officer were here, because I'm really, of course, she could fire me too. Anyhow, I wanted to see, I created my own experiment. I wanted to see what would happen if I sent an email, totally ridiculous. I created a fairy tale. 3 pages, single-spaced fairy tale about chaos, at one of our large offices. There was a merry-go-round in the parking lot spinning out of control. It was going so fast, employees were on it, and their feet were flying right and left, and their shoes were flying off. And there, 3 branches of the military were coming in because they'd heard there was tremendous chaos at CenturyLink at XYZ company. And there were crazy animals running all over the street in the town. There was a 30-foot bumblebee. There was a yellow moose with a 10-foot nose who was entering our building. There was a cat strutting down the street with 3-inch stiletto heels, sensuously strutting down the street, chasing a lizard king, and it goes on and on, crazy, ridiculous. No one could ever believe it, but I deliberately did that because it's unbelievable just to see where it would go. Well, also our officer for our Western North Carolina and Tennessee division, and I wish she were here. The FBI was after her because allegedly she had the missing links. That's all of this crazy story I will tell you, but I pressed the button about 8:30 in the morning to submit this ridiculous story, and by the end of the day I started getting results. I sent it just to one person. It went to Monroe, Louisiana, our headquarters in Monroe, and probably all 33 states we operate in, and probably circled the globe, and it is still going. So you see, you never know where your communications is going to end up, so be careful what you send and think before you send it. And all generations are doing this. This is not just the wise. And Bob is going to pick up from here and tell you some of the legal consequences and how to manage it.
Okay, I'm Bob Arrington with Wilson Worley, a law firm here in Kingsport. I owe my interest in this initially to being our firm chairman and working with our firm administrator, who is Lisa Fuller, who is, raise your hand Lisa, you can do that, who's sitting there. And some of these issues came up and her asking me about managing the people and writing our policies for our firm. And then I started getting some of the same questions from our clients, and I realized that I needed to dive in. I had the good fortune to be asked to be a presenter on this topic by Lisa Romeo at the American Arbitration Association in the webinar, and I got to collaborate with 2 lawyers from Denver, Colorado named David Stacy and Elizabeth Rita. And Liz Rita had done a lot of research on social networking statistics and a lot of research on generational differences. And so what I would like you to do, because there's not enough time for me to go into enormous detail, is to think about some of these issues in managing your workplace and try to fold into them what Pat told you about the different people you're going to be managing and the issues that they might present depending on how old they are, in addition to a number of other factors. I would also be remiss, according to Lisa, if I didn't tell you that in the back of the room we have some handouts about our firm and the place you can sign up to get our free newsletters on human resources and healthcare and other issues. So what we're going to do this evening, and I'm going to skip through a lot of it myself. Yeah, if you don't mind, you may have to tap. My very talented legal assistant, who is a Generation Xer, a classic Generation Xer, although she looks younger than that, really likes to play with PowerPoints. And so what she does is put these things where you keep on showing everything one at a time. And I need to get them all up there because we're on limited time here. But we're going to look at some of the issues. We're going to look at what kind of electronic media and social networking policy your company ought to have. And we're going to look at the legal limitations, how the law limits what you can do in regulating your own employees' use of that. And so could we go on to the next slide, please, ma'am? There's a lot of electronic media, computers, emails, telephones, internet, social networking sites, shopping sites, blogs, message boards, and of course pornography, which, no, you're fine. The problems you have in managing your staff are multifold in their use of some of these opportunities. One is wasting time, spending time shopping on the computer and not doing their job, for example. Misusing company property, looking at pornography when you're supposed to be working. Harassment liability, sending the wrong message to the wrong person. Spoiling evidence, because remember, if your company is in a lawsuit, you can't destroy any evidence that might, and that includes what's stored in your computers. Your own company's confidentiality, and for heaven's sake, your customer confidentiality. So going on to the next slide, we'll see a couple of things about social networking that gives us particular problems, because you're not talking about just company property. You're not talking about just company time. You're talking about what people may be saying about your company and the other people who work there in a public or semi-public way, depending on the security settings they have on their Facebook or Twitter or other sites. And so let's go on, Pat. The solution that we always say, it's what every lawyer and every HR person says, let's have a company policy. And you need one. And you need to have a policy on social networking, and the two are related, but they're not identical, as we're going to see. So we can go on. Social networking sites. How many of you are on Facebook? How many of you are on LinkedIn? Most of you. How many people tweet? At least one or two. How many people are on MySpace? A couple of people. See. Okay. Now, is there any generational difference? How many baby boomers do we have in here? Several. How many Generation X? Few. How many are millennials? How many are Generation Y? And I think, ma'am, what's your name?
Melissa.
Melissa. You do all of those sites, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. There you go. Yeah. But okay. Look at how Twitter has grown. We can move on real quick, Pat. And it turns out that employers are starting to look at their job applicants and looking at their job applicants on Facebook, LinkedIn, MySpace, and so on. According to Career Builder, 53% of companies check out their applicants and what they're doing on social networking sites. 29% of them use Facebook, 26% look at LinkedIn, and 21% look at MySpace. Okay. And people have, and here are reasons, and you can go back and look at them, for not hiring somebody. And, and showing themselves drinking, showing themselves not wearing very many clothes. I mean, people didn't, but even things that are like using emoticons too much, it shows you don't have any writing ability, have cost people their jobs. May I have the next slide, Pat? But also people have been hired because some companies have said this person writes well from what he or she has put on Facebook, that some person shows creativity, originality, good taste, good judgment. So it can help people as well as hurt them. So we can move on. Now, I didn't create this, and this is not a real Facebook page. Liz Rita created this. But this hypothetical Mary Smith got wasted last night. Hopefully I don't have to do any drug test anytime soon. And there's her picture having a big party. Just returned from my support meeting. It really hopes to have people with a similar condition to support you. And here's her with her friend. Now, Mary Smith comes up, and these type of things do happen. But here's the deal. Mary Smith got wasted last night. You going to not hire for that? You might. but you better ask your lawyer because she might be an alcoholic. Alcoholism is a protected disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Let's go back again. There we go. That's all right. Support meeting. It really helps to have people with a similar condition to support you. Same thing. If she's got a condition that's a disability, and then that's an ADA problem. If she's got a genetic condition, an inherited condition, there's GINA, Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. You can't discriminate against somebody because they have a disease that's inherited. And see, she has Turner syndrome. Okay? Let's say here she is with a girlfriend. It's not really clear what this woman's sexual preference is. But there's a bill in Congress right now that says it's illegal to discriminate against someone because of their sexual orientation, and that bill's about to pass. And if you're in a whole bunch of other states, and Dave and Liz were in Colorado, they already have a state law that says that. So you got to be careful if you're going and doing your due diligence search on a job applicant on judging them by what goes up on Facebook. Next one. Now we're finally ready to go on, Pat. So if you're going to do this, consider whether you really want to use this at all for your background search. If you do, think about some things, and we can go on now. Write a policy for your people to follow when they're checking. Obtain your applicant's permission ahead of time. Tell the people who are applying, we check you out on Facebook. Don't consider non-job related criteria. Next one. Take everything you find with a grain of salt. Consider the generational diversity issues, because people, and again, I'm not judging you, Melissa, because of how old you are. I'm following Pat's advice. Don't stereotype people, but people who are younger than me, and most of you are, don't take this stuff as seriously as people in my age bracket do. They just don't. And so just take what's up there with a grain of salt. Just because Mary Smith is holding up a beer and joking about going to a party doesn't mean that she gets blotto every night. She's just clowning around on Facebook and doesn't think anything of it, probably. So don't jump to any conclusions. Go ahead, go on. Okay, your electronic media policy, and let's skip this, Pat, because I'm running out of time. It needs to cover all these things: use of company property. Keep on. You can't use it for any of these things. Let's skip on. The critical point, and I think you have to tap it again. You've got to tell people that they have no expectation of privacy in what they do on company property. That the computer, if they're using your computer, then the company reserves the right to at least look at their emails, look at what they've got on the computer. Doesn't mean that the company's going to do anything about if somebody is sending them, an email. I send an email to my wife all the time. You want me to pick up anything on the way home from work? If our IT people picks that up, it's no big deal. But in order to know to pick out something that's wrong, you got to be able to see all of it, even though you're not going to do anything about most of it. Go ahead. That would apply to computers, cell phones, Blackberries, and so on. Now, does anybody like their people work at home? Remote connection? Let's skip that. Okay, there's a dicey problem, the right of inspection of non-company property, because somebody can hurt you on Facebook at home. Let me give you an example. Anybody here work in healthcare? Okay. How many? Okay. Doug, you're familiar with HIPAA.
Yeah.
You got any problem that somebody working for your practice would take his cell phone, take a picture of a patient inside an examination room, and put it up on Facebook. That's a bad problem. We had a client where they had an employee who did that. We got a phone call. I took the call, and the manager who called me says, "Bob, I can't do anything about what this guy puts up on Facebook, can I?" And I said, "No, you're right, you can't. But now that you found it out and you verified it, what you can do is tell him if he doesn't do something about it, you are going to fire his ass." Pardon the expression. By the way, a guy named Phil Rasnick says that, you know, that you Southerners terrify me. He says, "You fire people a piece at a time." Every time everybody says they're going to fire somebody's rear end, and I'm down south. He said, "We don't talk like that in Illinois." Okay. Now, a lot of people think that if all we have to do is to block our employees' use of social networking, and a lot of companies block certain internet sites from access on company computers, and that's fine. But what you have to understand is it doesn't solve the problem, because in the example I gave, this employee was doing it at home. He took his cell phone home, took patient information, put it on the internet at home. And at the same time, there's a lot of other no-nos that could be done. One employee put financial information in a well-known case on his private blog. And the next thing you know, the Securities and Exchange Commission was there threatening to prosecute him because the people who could sign up to his private blog were getting inside information to trade stock, and that's a violation of all kinds of federal laws. So you can't solve it just by blocking. Contents of a social networking policy: you don't disparage the company, don't disclose company information, customer, client, or patient information, and make a disclaimer: it does not prohibit protected communications. That's important. It's got to cover company computers, home computers, iPhones and Blackberries, and so on. But there are some laws that limit it, and I know we're going to zip through these, but there is the National Labor Relations Act, which I am going to spend a minute or two on, off-duty conduct laws, invasion of privacy laws, the Stored Communication Act, federal discrimination laws, and whistleblowing laws, and we can go on. And two more: Fair Credit Reporting Act and the GINA. Go ahead. Just let's keep going. The National Labor Relations Act. Here's a case. Okay, how many of you let your employees have limited use of their office computers for personal emails? Most people let their employees do it some. Okay, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of this. And I'll ask one more question. How many of you would let somebody in your office email everybody else in the office and say, "Hey, my daughter's in the Girl Scouts and she's selling Girl Scout cookies. I really would like you all to buy Girl Scout cookies from my daughter"? How many of you would let your employees do that? Some of you wouldn't, some of you won't. Many companies do. If you will let your employees do that, then you have to be able to let them use their emails to gripe about you. Because the National Labor Relations Act says that employees can band together to form a union or for other mutual benefit. So if you let them talk at all, you got to let them talk about things. They can't do it. You can tell them they can't do it except on breaks or at lunch. If they're spending their time grousing about the company when they should be doing your work, you can do something about that, but you can't do anything to them about doing it, because the same law that says they can form a union says that they can complain to each other about you. So if you have your IT person monitoring emails, and say it was our firm and somebody sent an email saying, "Boy, Lisa Fuller is really mean," we couldn't punish that employee for that. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Invasion of privacy. And here's a suggested policy. You've got to have a strong policy and then warn your employees in advance that you reserve the right to inspect these things, or you can run into legal invasion of privacy problems. Even if you have such a warning in states like New Jersey, you still run into those problems. Okay, next slide. Here's some things that, well, actually this comes from Lisa Fuller's policy. For our things, you tell your people, if you're using a social networking site, what you can do. It's okay to say where you work. You want your people to do that because you want to market your firm. You can post from time to time the general nature of what you do and what the lawyers and our company does and what your products your company say. You can say you've had a busy day, or to say I was really on a project. But you don't disparage the firm, don't disparage the customers, don't disclose confidential information, don't engage in discussions that would put you, the firm, or our clients in a false or bad light. Don't discuss specific client, company information. Don't do that. That's a no-no. So this is what it's okay to do. This is what it's not. And you got to tell them very specifically. And remember, if they're a Generation Y person, you can't just command and control them. You've got to tell them why. You've got to give them examples like I gave you about how you can get in trouble or you can get the company in trouble. We're not doing this just because we're mean. We have a reason to do this. And the next slide, Pat. I want to thank David Stacy and Elizabeth Rita. We left out a lot. We've got handouts for you. You can email our firm for more information. And I've had a good time with this, so I think Pat and I are ready for questions now.
I hope you enjoyed the program. Again, I look forward to you signing up and getting registered in the fall. Please visit our website at www.kosbe.org for more information, or come down to the Kingsport Chamber of Commerce and visit me. I'll see you then.